It was early springtime on Australia's Gold Coast. The setting was absolutely perfect. The surf was rolling. And so was the hometown favorite, who made his big move with the finish line in sight and provided the young sport with a classic, never-to-be-forgotten moment.
It's going to the outside. Miles Stewart takes the lead with the final few meters to go. It is going to be Miles Stewart. Then it's Richard Wells. And then Mike Pigg. It is Miles Stewart turning it up a notch now. Miles Stewart is going to win the men's
Something
title.
of a renegade in triathlon in his home country, Stewart silenced his critics with a dramatic victory. Mike Pigg and Rick Wells tied for second place, something Pigg has lived with for the past 12 months.
I got butterflies after the race watching the film. But then I left Australia and I kind of left that there. Now, when I'm in the last maybe 2K of the race and Miles Stewart's on my side, I might go for broke right there instead of waiting for the finish line.
Last year's other runner-up has a simple strategy this time around.
Just go faster than anyone else, you know, and just pin my ears back and go for it, and not worry about anyone. You know, I'm not worrying about anyone. It's just what Rick Wells does on Saturday, and to hell with everyone else.
Miles Stewart has come a long way to defend his title, but he may not be a factor in 92.
It turns out that I contracted hepatitis in a swimming, out of a race down in Canberra. I'd fallen off my bike a week before the race, or sorry, just a few days before the race, and did the race, and it went through my system through the sore, and I've had it for about the last 3 months.
Fresh from a second straight Canadian title, but bothered by a sore heel, Canada's Joanne Ritchie, the racing mother of two, is back to defend the title she won down under.
Joanne Ritchie is going to win the world title. Just a few more meters to go.
Ritchie will defend her title on a course she likes and knows better than most.
I just love this course. It's just beautiful. It's going to be a very technical, challenging course. Who's ever the most aggressive out there on that bike section, whoever gambles right to that line on those corners and doesn't go over, is going to have a huge lead coming out on the bike.
Karen Smyers won the world title 2 years ago in Orlando and now wants number 2.
We're definitely prepared for them this year. We have a real strong team. Our qualifying course was done on a very hilly course, so I think that the people that are here are well suited to this course. And we're
advantage. And while the Canadians sign up, others wait. Then it's the turn of the largest team in the competition. Last year, the United States won 26 medals down under. Competing for the first time ever in the Worlds, the triathletes from South Africa. The swirl of the pipes led the athletes in the Parade of Nations through the streets of Huntsville, a reminder of Mardi Gras for the Brazilians. A place for the Brits to show the flag. A chance for the Germans to do a little cheering. Of course, the Kiwis would never be outdone. But the largest cheer was saved for the home team, the 240-strong Canadian entry.
I
Hi, everyone. Steve Armitage along with Steve King, and welcome to the 1992 World Triathlon Championships here in Muskoka. This time last year, Steve King and I were standing on a beach in Australia at the world's big difference in the temperature.
It certainly is, Steve. We're at the other extreme today, and we're also at the other extreme when it comes to courses. This is probably the most technically demanding course we've ever seen at a World Championships. Very tough bike course because a lot of turns, a lot of climbs, same with the run course, and also they've got the potential for some very slippery grass out there.
The event here in Canada has attracted a top-flight field, especially among the men.
Indeed, we've got the returning top 5 from last year's Worlds, Miles Stewart of Australia, but he's an unknown factor right now because of a potential illness. We have the 2 men who had that great sprint finish and tied for second place, Mike Pick of the US and Richard Wells of New Zealand. We have Harold Robinson of the US who was 4th and Leandro Machado of Brazil who was 5th. But Brad Bevan, the Australian, is one who many are favouring to take the gold medal. Also in there, the young phenom from Canada, Andrew McMartin, who's done so well. And we have some of the Europeans, amongst them Simon Lessing, who many are fancying, and Glenn Cook, a man who has already won a silver medal at a World Championships. We also have a very strong French team, and the South Africans, an unknown there, but they are led by team captain Kevin Richards.
Okay, let's talk about the favourites among the women.
Among the women, again, the top 5 are returning. The Canadians, 1 and 2, Joanne Ritchie and Terry Smith. 3rd placer last year, Michellie Jones of Australia. Many are fancying her for the gold medal. 4th placer, Isabelle Mouton of France. 5th placer, Catherine Davis of Spain. But others to watch for, past gold and bronze medalists from the US, Karen Smyers and Joy Hansen. I also suspect 2 other Australians will do well. Bianca van Rooijswijk, who in fact was winning last year but suffered from dehydration, and Jenny Alcorn of Australia. She was the lady who recently became the World Duathlon Champion.
Okay, right now, let's take a look at the course here in Muskoka. Most of the athletes competing in this year's championships entered Canada through Toronto. Then it's a 2.5-hour drive north to the lake country of Muskoka. The calm waters of Peninsula Lake, with its temperature in the low teens, is the site for the 1.5K swim, followed by a 300-meter run uphill to the transition area. Then it's off on a very demanding 40K bike ride. The scenery will be spectacular, but most of the triathletes will be too occupied changing gears to notice. The 10K run isn't quite as challenging, but the different surfaces, grass, gravel, and asphalt, will demand the runner's full attention. Now, let's join Stephen Fleck with more on the field.
We've got about 1,700 competitors competing here today. It's a really big international field. We've got athletes from all over the world. One of them is Jenny Alcorn from Australia. She recently won the World Duathlon Championships earlier this year in Germany. Jenny, how are you feeling about the race today?
A little bit nervous, like everyone, I suppose. The weather conditions look like they're going to clear up nicely. I hope that it's not going to be too cold for us.
This certainly isn't Bermuda-like weather this morning, Kevin.
No, it isn't. The reason why it's so cold that, our bodies don't get a chance to warm up at all through the whole thing. From the swim, the water is never this cold back in Bermuda.
We're here at Hanella Stein's bike. She's an athlete from South Africa, and she's competing internationally for her first time in her life. Hanella, how do you feel about it today?
I feel very scared, very excited. For us, it's an opportunity to be here. We've never seen or experienced something like this, and it's just great.
John, how do you feel about today's race?
Oh, I feel pretty comfortable about it, thanks. The course is a good one, good honest course, lots of hills in it, a bit like New Zealand.
How do you think this cool weather is going to affect your race today?
I don't know, I'm used to cold weather, but this is more cold than it is in Denmark, so you'll see.
Well, we wish you the very best today. Good luck. As you can see, we've got a big international field today, athletes from all over the world. We're going to see some great racing from start to finish. And now back to Steve Armitage.
And the first excitement was provided by the best junior triathletes in the world. This is one sport where a solid grounding under the age of 20 is almost mandatory. Just learning how to survive the swim start is a basic. But nothing could prepare the athletes for the cold water. It was a shock to the system. Appreciated even more by the cold fans on shore. Next up, the junior women. A good start in the short 1.5K swim is not critical, but it can certainly help. By the time the first junior athlete was in sight of the finish line, the sun had broken through and made it a very pleasant morning. And it was Great Britain's Spencer Smith who claimed the title as the #1 junior triathlete for 1992, with a good time of 1 hour, 53 minutes, and 57 seconds, more than 2 minutes in front of his nearest competitor. Smith and Matthew Belfield gave Britain gold and bronze. Cameron Brown of New Zealand took the silver. The junior women's title went to a 19-year-old from Germany, Sonia Krolik, her third straight crown. A mere 36 seconds in front of another New Zealander, Sarah Harrow. Canada's Kirsty Otto, 6 minutes off the pace, gave the host nation the bronze. When we return to this beautiful resort community where hundreds of Canadians spend their summers, the men's and women's elite division in the 92 Triathlon World Championship. Welcome back to our coverage of the 1992 Triathlon World Championship from the Muskoka region in Ontario, Canada. We are about to get the athletes into the water, the men's elite division. Here's the start.
And Steve, we have 119 men in the elite men's division representing 44 countries.
And it's a good and hectic start, as is often the case with this kind of swim start where the athletes aren't in the water to begin with. So you have to be a little careful. You have to try and avoid the swimmer in front of you.
And we have to remember what's good for the athletes and good for us is those buoys out there are exactly 100 meters apart in this 1,500-meter swim.
And it looks as if Rick Wells of New Zealand has done what we expected. There's the defending women's champion, Joanne Ritchie, on shore, getting a kiss and a hug. And there is Rick Wells of New Zealand, the early leader.
And he was expected to be out front. Remember, he is a man who has already won a silver and a bronze at the World Championships. And others behind him include the South African Kevin Richards. Now, he has never been beaten out of the water before in a triathlon. He's been racing in France, so he's one of the few South Africans who have had some international experience.
And now the women's elite start.
Set!
Again, what you have to try and avoid on the start is getting hit in the head.
Indeed, and in this elite women's division, we have to remember there are lesser numbers than the men. There are 78 that have taken off.
And who would you expect to go to the top in the women's swim?
Well, I think we have to look at a couple of Canadians out there, Joanne Ritchie and Marie-Josée Cossette. They know the course well. They came out 1 and 2 last year when it was the Canadian National Championships. Others to watch for include Dominique Donner, the South African, Tracy Ellingham, the Australian, and possibly Megan Robertson of New Zealand, who apparently is leading right now.
And there is Rick Wells of New Zealand. Speaking of New Zealanders, he has the lead in the swim with that very powerful stroke. The head coming up out of the water every once in a while just to check his location. Meanwhile, back at the women.
And it is Megan Robertson, the New Zealander, who is leading, in fact. So some New Zealanders are very happy about this. There are a lot of spectators come from around the world. Remember, total number of triathletes in today's World Championships, over 1,700.
And there's a good look back at the colorful shoreline of Peninsula Lake and a good look at Mishellie Jones without goggles. The 23-year-old from Sydney, Australia, who trains in San Diego, not too far off the pace in the women's swim. Meanwhile, the men's swim, they have 500 meters to go once they turn that corner.
And Steve, the leader is still the 1990 Commonwealth Games champion, Richard Wells of New Zealand. Also, Kevin Richards from South Africa right behind him, and Martin Dvorak of Czechoslovakia, although I believe it's his teammate Thomas Kochar that we really have to look for in the overall standings. Also there, Robin Brood, the Olympian representing Great Britain. He is their team captain. And Brad Bevan appears to be in the top 10, one of the many Aussies we expect to be up there. Unfortunately, it looks like Miles Stewart is about 40 seconds off the pace at this time.
And that's not good news for Miles Stewart. He told us before the race that he was suffering from hepatitis. So I would think that he would have to be well placed in the swim to have any chance at all of defending his title. Well, when you notice Joanne Ritchie in the water, you may notice that she's looking back from time to time. There's good reason for that.
I tend to do a lot of looking back when I'm swimming, and I'm always checking to see who's in our group and who's behind and who's where. You probably think that we don't know who we're swimming with then, but we know. And I'm always checking under my arm, hoping there's a gap there.
Well, there's a little bit of a gap between Joanne Ritchie and the leader, Megan Robertson of New Zealand.
But actually, Joanne looks very well placed. Just look at the difference in the stroke rate. The ladies are not really drafting as much because they're split up. But look at the men. As we look down from the chopper, they are taking advantage of the drafting. About 8 to 10 men, they're very well placed, just seconds separating them.
What a great job our chopper pilot Dave Tomasini is doing, along with cameraman Gary Childs, as they zero in on Rick Wells of New Zealand. And there is an athlete they pulled from the water, Kevin Tucker of Bermuda. Obviously conditions too cold for Kevin.
Oh, and for people like the Brazilians, Leandro Machado was in top 5 last year in the Worlds. He is suffering badly. He's out of the top 100 at this time, so he really has his work cut out for him. As we look at the leaders now approaching the end of the first discipline of the World Triathlon Championships, the 1,500-meter swim.
And the first man out of the water, as we expected, Rick Wells of New Zealand.
Once again, he's done it, but behind him, Kevin Richards of South Africa, Martin Dvorak and Robin Brew, 1 second apart there as they come through. Now they have that 300-meter uphill run to the transition area. Also in there, Steve, Brett Rose of the US, Thomas Kochar of Czechoslovakia, Garrett McCarthy, one of the fancied cyclists out there. He's in the top 10. We have Colombian Pablo Restrepo and Brad Bevan, one of the fancied athletes. He should be doing well. Nick Croft also from Australia, and Simon Lessing coming through in 12th place from Great Britain.
The athletes have to be very careful when they're coming out of the water. They have to come up a ramp. Then you see they place some sawdust down there to take the slipperiness off the grass.
Steve, we've seen some very fast times here. There are only 21 seconds that separated to the top 10, and Rick Wells' time, 17:06. That is a super fast time for the swim. And now it all counts as they push their way towards the top to the transition. Who's going to be the first man out onto the bike course?
And we should point out at this point in the run from the swim to the transition, it's all uphill.
It certainly is. Miles Stewart, by the way, has just exited 25th place, 18:08, so he's a minute and 2 seconds down on our leader, Richard Wells.
And, Steve, we should point out that Mike Pigg, last year's runner-up, he tied with Rick Wells for that position in Australia, was 16th coming out of the water. This is Robin Brew of Great Britain leading the men into the transition area, followed by Rick Wells, who has himself well prepared physically for this year's championship.
I believe I'm fitter than I was last year. You know, I've trained a lot harder and my training times have been a lot better.
It certainly looks as if Rick Wells is well prepared as he looks for his bike in the transition area. Look at that wetsuit, almost off.
And in fact, Steve, it was developed by a New Zealand firm, so they're very happy to see him come out in the lead, and I'm sure South Africans are delighted to see Kevin Richards in second place. Brad Bevan came out in ninth, 17:26, 20 seconds off the pace, but Richard Wells of New Zealand, the first man out onto the bike course. Look who's coming behind him, though. Garrett McCarthy from Ireland, the only elite male triathlete representing Ireland. He really has a good chance here today. A very strong cyclist.
But it's going to be Rick Wells of New Zealand, last year's runner-up, first out on the bike course.
And others going out there now, Robin Brew, Brett Rose of the US, Thomas Kochar from Czechoslovakia, and Martin Dvorak, also from Czechoslovakia. We haven't seen the Czechs compete since Florida 2 years ago.
And there's Mike Pigg, who may have been bothered by the cold water.
Miles Stewart is there now. He hasn't had too bad a swim, but he's lost a lot of time, really. A minute back, he won't like that, so he's got an enormous amount of work ahead of him on this arduous cycle course.
Garrett McCarthy of Ireland has just taken the lead from Rick Wells. Now the time for the men in the swim. 17:06 for Wells. Richards second out of the water, followed by Robin Brew of Great Britain.
And meanwhile, look at what's happening in the women's division. The top two, Megan Robertson of New Zealand and Joanne Ritchie of Canada, have broken it apart there as they now turn towards the final 500 metres. They've opened up maybe 25 to 30 metres on the second pack. In that pack, another Canadian, Marie-Josée Cossette, Dominique Donner of South Africa also there. Back to the men, though. Look who is leading. Garrett McCarthy, the man who recently got a World Cup win in Moscow.
And there is Rick Wells of New Zealand, who is comfortably placed very early in the bike ride.
And Steve, it's Thomas Kochar, the Czech, who has moved into third, with Brad Bevan now in fourth place. And it's Brad, the man who is leading the World Cup Series. He's had some tremendous wins, Columbia, Ireland, and recently beat Mark Allen in Chicago. So he is the fancied athlete.
And don't forget, Bevan was second at the World Championships in Orlando, Florida in 1990. When conditions, weather-wise, very, very humid. Back to the women's swim. It is still Robertson of New Zealand leading the defending women's world champion, Joanne Ritchie.
And the pace they're going at right now would see them under 20 minutes. That is an excellent swim from the leading twosome. And look what's happened there. A second pack. They've really opened it up. This is ideal for Joanne. This is exactly what she wants to happen. Dominique Donner, the South African, after the swim, unfortunately, should be going backwards. But others to watch out for in the top 10. Michellie Jones is well placed, so is Joy Hansen.
Back out on the cycle course, that is McCarthy of Ireland, still the leader.
And he is flying. Look at the gap he has opened up.
And you can hear the honking of the horns. McCarthy getting too close to the motorcycles, not liking it. He wants them to give him more space.
But the last thing any athlete wants today is to have an accident or get pulled for drafting. We've had a change here. Look at that. Brad Bevan now in second place. Kochar and Wells third and fourth.
And there's a good look at Brad Bevan and that very special bike, the prototype of which cost $25,000.
Yeah, that's a bike that's won him a lot of races over the years, Steve. As I mentioned earlier, Columbia, Ireland. He was second in Moscow to our present leader, Garrett McCarthy. That is Kochar in third. And the lead women on the swim are now even catching up to some of the elite men there.
And it's still Robertson with a slight lead over Joanne Ritchie of Canada.
And again, the pace is very, very good here. You see Joanne's stroke rate is not as fast as Robertson's, but she's holding on and drafting comfortably. And look at the leg stroke there. They're hardly using their feet at all. They're saving it for the bike and run.
With 40K on the bike and 10K on the run, and that run up from the swim exit to the transition area, you're going to need all the leg power you can muster. And it's going to be Robertson of New Zealand first up the ramp, first out of the water, followed by Joanne Ritchie of Canada.
And considering the temperature, it was 64 degrees. This is great swimming. 19 minutes 45 for the leader and 1 second back for Joanne. Marie-Jose Cosset in there as well. Dominique Donner of South Africa. Tracy Ellingham of Australia. Jenny Rose, a New Zealander. The Spanish lady, Barastagai, going through. Mikaeli Jones in 8th. 20.02. She's about 17 seconds off the pace. Joy Hansen, the first from the US, going through. And Louise Anne Rivette from South Africa. Great to see them doing so well. 2 in the top 10. Just 20 seconds separating the top 10 women as Joanne now assumes the lead on the run-up.
And it looks as if Joanne Ritchie, the defending women's world champion, will be first into the transition.
And she'll be delighted about that because she knows this course like no one else. Remember, this is where the Canadians hosted their national championships last year. And remember, there's a team title at stake here. Last year, the first time the US didn't win the women's team title, it was won by Canadians who were led by Joanne Ritchie, who's now heading towards that transition. Megan Robinson just falling off the pace, and she is being chased. Here, there's Marie-Jose Cosset on the left of the screen and Dominique Donner of South Africa.
Joanne Ritchie making her way into the transition area. What about a pre-race strategy for the defending women's world champion?
My primary strategy right now is to stay calm, as you might have noticed. I'm trying to bring myself down. I'm still too uptight.
Well, I'm sure she has gotten rid of those pre-race butterflies because she's first into the transition area, will probably be first on the bike.
And she'll be anxious to know how someone like Mikaeli Jones has done. Well, we can tell you Mikaeli was 17 seconds behind Joanne coming out of the swim. So Joanne really has to blast it as she takes off, the first female to go on to this tough course. But she's been over this a number of times before. She had the fastest bike time in their national championships last year.
So Joanne Ritchie is the first out onto the bike course, 40 kilometers over this very demanding, very technical bike course. She's putting her feet into the shoes now. The shoes were already on the pedal.
Steve, there were 2 New Zealanders in the top 10, and that's Jenny Rose there, who came out in 6th place. Alongside her was Dominique Donner of South Africa, but second out onto the bike. What a transition for Tracy Ellingham of Australia, and it's Mikaeli Jones, the bronze medalist from Australia last year, going out onto the bike course in 3rd place. They should be very happy about this. Remember, the women's team event should be between the US, Canada, Australia, and possibly the Danish team who have done very well on the swim.
So in the very early stages of the women's bike ride over a distance of 40K, it's Joanne Ritchie, the defending women's world champion, in the lead, followed by 2 Australians. And we should point out that very early into the bike ride, the hills come into play. You can see Joanne Ritchie now hitting the first. She is out of the seat, and this is where you have to start pedaling hard. It really begins to take its toll early.
Some of the athletes are not going to be too happy with their swim, considering the conditions. It was fairly cool. Hanelle Stein there coming out in the top 40. She's from South Africa. Oh, no, Great Britain's Ginny Pollard having trouble even before she gets onto the bike. That's really disappointing for her. She'll be losing all sorts of time.
Let's check the official standings on the swim for the women. Megan Robertson of New Zealand first out of the water with a time of 19:45. Then it was two Canadians in second and third. Right now on the bike ride, Tracy Ellingham is about to be passed by Mishellie Jones. Does Mishellie have a strategy for this demanding bike ride and the run to follow?
Basically, I think if I can get up that first hill, you know, with good time, I think that's going to be the major impact. And of course, you're going to have to run fast because there's a lot of good runners.
Well, Steve, it looks as if Mishellie Jones has made that first hill in good time.
And it's hard to believe she can open up that sort of a gap already on Tracy Ellingham. Tracy recently won a race in Bourges, France.
Our coverage of the 1992 Triathlon World Championship will continue. Welcome back to our coverage of the 1992 ITU Triathlon World Championships from Muskoka, Canada. This is the leader on the bike, Garrett McCarthy of Ireland. He's followed by Brad Bevan of Australia, and then Kosar of Czechoslovakia. And then Rick Wells, the 30-year-old from New Zealand, just making the turn. He was the first out of the water. Brad Bevan, second place at the World Championships in Orlando. He certainly knows how important winning a world title can be.
It's very prestigious to win the world title, and I think there's a lot of guys out there that are chasing it, and I'm sure there's going to be like the difference between first and about 10th is only going to be like 2 minutes maybe. It's going to be close.
The Australian looking very comfortable on the bike, but the man he's trying to catch is Garrett McCarthy of Ireland.
And McCarthy is trying to open up as much of a gap as possible on the pack that is behind him. Just look at that, about 15 to 20 riders there, all capable of running very fast times. Another lady who's capable of that, though, is Jenny Alcorn, the World Duathlon Champion, but she is some 3 minutes off the pace in the swim. One lady who's not even going to get onto the bike course, Nelma Razor of Brazil. She's got a flat tyre. She's obviously upset, and she's not going onto the bike course. That's a great disappointment for her. 3 Brazilians, in fact, in trouble after the swim.
To come so far and have it end like that certainly has to be disappointing.
It certainly does, and one man who doesn't want to be disappointed this year, remember, he's already got a bronze and a silver. Richard Wells moving past Brad Bevan back into second place. A great move from him. Let's hope he can maintain it.
And on the latest Queen's list, Richard Wells picked up an MBE, the first triathlete to ever achieve that honor.
And he certainly can be proud of that. He was the 1987 Sprint Triathlon champion. The women's race, great battle here for first and second. Joanne Ritchie is slowly being caught by Mishellie Jones of Australia, and Jenny Rose, a New Zealander, still in third place. A great ride from her.
And also enjoying a great ride is Fiona Cribb of Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. 33 years of age. She was 11th out of the swim, so she is going well.
And she has overtaken Isabelle Mouton of France, who was 4th in last year's World Championship. So a great ride from the Canadian.
And Garrett McCarthy of Ireland continues to enjoy a great ride. He is leading among the elite men. But he is being pursued by Rick Wells and Brad Bevan of Australia as they start to come into the area known as the roller coaster. How tough is this bike ride? Let's go out on the course right now and join our man, Stephen Fleck.
We've just passed Harp Lake on the bike ride, and we're entering a very technically demanding part of the bike course. There's lots of hills. Athletes have to shift down to a lower gear, in the saddle, out of the saddle. Really puts a premium on power. This is where the strong cyclists really have to take advantage of the situation and can really make some major moves through the field at this point. There's also a number of really sharp turns that force you to cycle with your head up.
That's pretty sound advice from our man on the course, Stephen Fleck. Keep your head up no matter where you are on a bike.
Indeed, we went over the course, Steve, and we know how tough it is for them out there. Lots and lots of turns, but there is a pack forming in the group behind the leading men, and that could present some dangers.
Our chopper pilot, Dave Tomasini, has the chopper into position so you can see just how much of a lead Garrett McCarthy enjoys on Brad Bevan of Australia.
and he needs to open up a big lead because he's 168 pounds and 5 feet 8, so he does not have a runner's frame. But this man can really motor. Remember, he has already got a third in Ireland, a second to Andrew McMartin, the Canadian, in Sweden, and he got a big win in Moscow at the World Cup race.
Now you can see the area of the course, the bike course we call the roller coaster. Up and down, up and down.
And McCarthy isn't asking what's happening behind him. He's looking forward probably to making the turn to see exactly what's going on behind him. He would need probably a minute lead off the run if he's going to hold it to get a win today. They nickname him Lucky. Let's hope it is his lucky day.
He's just gone through that corner there, pursued by Brad Bevan of Australia.
Brad has been training with Dave Scott in Boulder, Colorado, and he lives with the 1990 champion Greg Welch of Australia, who unfortunately is not competing today.
Garrett McCarthy of Ireland, the leader. This is the battle for third and fourth place between Kozar of Czechoslovakia and Rick Wells of New Zealand. Wells has just gone into third.
Now look at the pack. The marshals have to be looking at this for any drafting infractions. I see a few people in there. Frank Clark doing very well up there. A couple of Frenchmen up there as well. Now what's happening here? It looks like Joanne Ritchie is making the turn, and that is one of the elite men she is coming up to there. Remember, the elite women went off 10 minutes back of the men. One gentleman from Bermuda, and look at that. Just about 4 or 5 seconds separating 1 and 2 in the women's race. Mickeely Jones of Australia in second place, just behind Joanne Ritchie.
And now coming into your picture, Jenny Rose of New Zealand. She's followed by Fiona Cribb of Saskatchewan, Canada, and then Isabelle Mouton of France.
And Steve, we wondered what was happening behind these ladies with the US women. I understand Karen Smyers and Donna Peters came out the water in 50th and 51st place overall, some 3 minutes back of the leaders. So they'll have to really motor on the bike. And one man who's certainly doing that, Garrett McCarthy, the only Irish elite male triathlete in the field today. And he really wants to come away with a big one. Leading the World Cup Series is the man behind him, Brad Bevan. And what a season is it. Hey, something has happened here, Steve. Look at this. He has a bike there worth about $5,000 or $6,000, but even with that, you can have mechanical breakdowns. It looks like his chain has come off there. As he looks up and he can see who's behind him there, look at that, Richard Wells now. They'll be happy to move up into second place. Richard Wells, a New Zealander, and Thomas Kochar of Czechoslovakia. Meanwhile, Brad is losing all sorts of time. This will be a tremendous disappointment for him. He really needs to work hard now to get back on the pace on the bike. Mickeely Jones, meanwhile, is making up ground. Last time we saw it, just about 4 seconds back, and she is now coming up to Joanne Ritchie, the Canadian who's been leading since she exited the swim.
So Mickeely Jones, the 23-year-old from Sydney who trains in San Diego, California, 9 wins this season, is about to make a move and overtake the defending women's world champion Joanne Ritchie of Canada.
Now, there were 16 seconds between them after the swim, so Mickeely has really motored. Remember, they're not halfway on the bike at this time, so Joanne will have to respond if she wants to be there to claim a second victory in the World Championships.
There's Garrett McCarthy of Ireland leading the men's elite division rather comfortably. You cannot see the second-place cyclist.
To give you an idea on just how fast he is going, remember, he came out of the swim in 7th place, some 18 seconds back of the leader, Richard Wells, who is now in 2nd place.
The newest MBE, Richard Wells, a real veteran of this sport, well-respected worldwide.
And there's another pass. It is 28-year-old Jimmy Riccatello from Tucson, Arizona, who's now moved into 3rd place over Thomas Kochar in 4th, and he is going past Richard Wells as well. I'm sure Wellesley is very surprised at this. He was motoring himself, and now he's moving back in the field. He wants to stay in touch with them. He needs to if he's going to get a medal again.
It seems that Riccatello has come out of nowhere. The battle for first place between the women continues. That's Joanne Ritchie currently in 2nd place, and it looks as if she is about to make a move on Mickeely Jones.
And she needs to, Steve, because if she wants to hang in there and medal once again, she knows there's some very fast runners behind her, but she has to open up on this point, because if it comes down to the run, Mickeely Jones would be the fancied runner, but they're both very strong cyclists.
And both of them are out of the saddle now as they attack this hill, one of many on the bike course.
We have to remember, as well as their gold and bronze medals from last year in 1990, they were 12th and 13th places overall. And this lady, Jenny Rose, got 13th place in last year's World Championships. And so she wants to go a top 10 today, and she's doing that right now.
Steve, you were wondering a few moments ago what happened to the Americans. Well, there's one of them, Donna Peters. She was 50th out of the swim. She has made up a lot of ground on the bike.
She certainly has, and this was the lady who was the Rookie of the Year in 1990, the 30-year-old from Seattle, Washington, the fastest cyclist out there on the course, and she is really going through the field. And Garrett McCarthy, the man who is opening up on the field, is already made up about 20 seconds since the swim exit.
Garrett McCarthy of Ireland making his way into Huntsville as we go back into the pack.
And you just mentioned Donna Peters moved through the field in the women's race. In the men's race, Thomas Hellriegel of Germany, who came out of the swim in 65th position, has now overtaken Jimmy Riccatello, who looks like he's waving for some sort of assistance out there. So the German, Thomas Hellriegel, who in fact was 7th in the World Junior Championships last year, is now 2nd overall in the men's elite championships.
But you have to wonder if he may not be pushing himself just a little bit too hard at this stage in the bike ride. Remember, there's a lot of racing left.
And as Hellriegel tries to make a move up to the front, so does Joanne Ritchie try and make a move to come back at Michellie Jones. The two-time Canadian national champion knows the run course like no other, and she wants to get out into that transition area faster than anyone else.
Joanne also knows that Michellie Jones is a very strong runner, so she can't give her too much of a lead coming off the bike and starting the run.
Joanne is undoubtedly the stronger of the two. Remember, she is the indoor rowing world champion. But Michellie Jones, for pure speed, is the fastest of the two when it comes to the run. So a great battle. This is the drama in the women's race right now. But we have to remember there's a lot of action going on behind them. One of the ladies who's amongst the action is Ginny Rose, the New Zealander. But it is Donna Peters of the US who's really coming through. And I should mention, Steve, she's not even on the USA team. She was designated a B team member. So no matter what she does, she's not going to be scoring for the US team. But she is now in 4th place and about to take 3rd. What a phenomenal ride from this lady.
What a great time to have the ride of your life, and that's exactly what Donna Peters has done. Remember, she was 50th out of Peninsula Lake.
But we have to remember she was the 1990 national biathlon champion, upsetting Liz Downing, the queen of biathlon.
Donna Peters, a 30-year-old out of Seattle, Washington, so she is very familiar with hills in her training. Lots of hills around Seattle.
And she's showing her strength now, and this looks tough as they have to change gears and work hard on these climbs. And look at this, Michellie Jones has opened up once again on Joanne Ritchie, but Joanne is very strong as they come up to the halfway mark on the bike course.
So we know they have 20 kilometers to go in the women's cycle race.
So Donna Peters, the lady who was the duathlete, now a triathlete, in fact came away with the win in the St. Anthony's Tampa Bay this year and got a brilliant 2nd in the Nice International to none other than Paula Newby-Fraser.
And now Donna Peters has 20 kilometers to go. She is in 3rd position. She's followed by Jenny Rose of New Zealand.
And the man who's still leading in the men's race, though, the Irishman Garrett McCarthy, makes his home in the States, though. But look at the pack behind him. What a race we have here for the top 10 positions. Garrett McCarthy now coming into Huntsville. And look at the crowd that have turned out to welcome the athletes into their town.
The triathletes have received tremendous support from the people in Huntsville throughout the World Championship week.
We look down from the chopper and we see the 2nd place man, a big surprise here, Thomas Hellriegel from Germany, the man who was 7th in the World Juniors last year. None of the top 3 juniors from last year racing today, but Garrett McCarthy, 2 times in the top 30 in the World Elite Men's, presently leading.
And if you thought there were hills out in the countryside, there are also hills in downtown Huntsville.
And he's going to be a little upset to see that big pack behind him because he needs a large lead off the bike if he wants to hold it together and come away with a World Championship win today. Same with Michellie Jones. She cannot afford to give away too much on the bike to people like Donna Peters, who's storming through, Melissa Mantak, Joy Hansen and Karen Smyers also starting to come through. There we see Donna Peters and Ginny Rose trying to hang on in 4th place.
And the men coming through Huntsville, that large pack. There you see the hay bales set up just in case one of the cyclists should lose control coming into that corner. It could be a very dangerous area.
The man we're looking at presently from the Ukraine, Bogdan Mihalus. It's great to see him in action. Oh, my goodness, he's down. Let's hope he can get... He's okay. He's standing up. Look at that road rash. Oh, I hope he's going to be able to get back on. He's taking his time as he should do, get some medical attention. Obviously very, very disappointed. Thank goodness for the hay bales that are there.
The crowd can't believe it. They were right there when it happened. as our leader, Garrett McCarthy, passes Grandview Golf Course. This is one of 2 golf courses that will be used during the run portion of the competition.
Now, the excitement must be mounting here. Remember, there are thousands of people in the transition area awaiting news of what's going on. Looking forward to seeing the lead men. Oh, that's great to see. Mikhail's getting back onto the course. I'm sure he's pleased to be able to do that. He's come a long, long way to represent the Ukraine here, one of 44 countries. Let's hope he can finish off the race today.
A spectacular-looking spill. Bogdan Mihalus of the Ukraine back on his bike. The bike doesn't appear to be any worse for wear any more than Mihalus does.
I think that was Thomas Kochar there, just went beyond us with Richard Wells coming back. It's good to see that. We haven't seen Mike Pigg yet. I understand he's in that second group out there. Remember, he came out of the swim, I believe, in 16th place. That is Simon Lessing. Good to see him. Certainly one of the pre-race favourites, and I expect him to be well placed on the run.
So Simon Lessing has gotten himself into pretty good position. That's Joanne Ritchie making another move, yet another move on Mishellié Jones of Australia, the battle for first and second in the women's elite division. And now the defending women's world champion, Joanne Ritchie, once again moves into first place.
And she really has to try and motor in the last few kilometres here as we watch McCarthy coming down one of the hills. This is the final descent for them. Less than a mile to go now to that transition area.
McCarthy has just passed the pro shop for the Highlands Golf Course, one of 3 in the area.
And there we see second and third places. Hellriegel from Germany, the 20-year-old, doing extremely well. And with him just a few metres back, their 28-year-old Jim Riccatello, the first of the US riders to come past us.
And now Garrett McCarthy has the transition area in sight. You can see him getting out of his cycling shoes in preparation of going from the bike to the run.
And you can see how muscular this man is. That's the reason he has to work hard on the run. He knows there are men behind him, including Hellriegel, who can chip away at that sort of a time. So he really has to try and push hard. Look at this. Riccatello trying to get into that transition area in second place. Hellriegel looking around, wondering who it is. These guys haven't raced together before, but it's McCarthy coming through, and a very good cycling portion for him. Extremely fast time, well under the hour.
He has to dismount and run or walk the cycle into the transition area, get into his running shoes as quickly as possible, and then get out on the 10K run.
So Hellriegel coming off in second, Riccatello in third. So the US team are battling for a team title. Let's see how quickly McCarthy can get onto the run. There he goes. Ireland's #1. They'll be very happy about that. Germany, a very strong team today. They also want to go for the team and individual title.
And there goes the leader, Garrett McCarthy of Ireland.
And behind him there we have Wesley Hobson of the US, a man who was third recently in Chicago to Brad Bevan and Mark Allen.
But it's McCarthy that the field is chasing right now. He is the first man out of the transition area, off the bike onto the run. There's Rick Wells of New Zealand.
And Rick must be very disappointed to have lost some ground there on the run as we look at 2 more Americans. Riccatello, one of them men going out there as well. Simon Lessing in that lead group. Mark Bates from Canada also coming through. Another Canadian there, the man who won their national championships. Andrew McMartin going through.
And also coming through, Mike Pigg and Rob Burrell. And the man they're trying to catch is Garrett McCarthy of Ireland, the first out on the run. Now let's check the standings as they head out onto the run. And the overall leader is indeed Garrett McCarthy of Ireland with a time of 1 hour, 16 minutes, and 25 seconds. He's followed by Wesley Hobson of the United States and Helge Lorenz of Austria. Our coverage of the 92 ITU Triathlon World Championships from Canada will continue. Never a good sign in any sport. An ambulance is making its way onto the course here at the Triathlon World Championships to check on Miles Stewart, the defending world champion. What happened?
What happened, Miles?
I got flat and I think I've broken my toe as well, so it's not a good day for me.
So the Australian and the defending world champion, Miles Stewart, is out of the competition.
And that's really altered the face of things as far as team competition is concerned. But in the men's overall and individual race, look what's happening here for the pack that was behind Garrett McCarthy. Mark Bates of Canada now coming up to the shoulders of Wesley Hobson of the US. They're both poised to be right up there for the men's individual and team titles. The US and Canada and Great Britain up there. They've got a couple of men in the top 20 so far. But it is the Irishman, Garrett McCarthy. He is now losing his lead, though. Look at the group of men behind him. This is the closest World Triathlon Championships we've ever seen this early into the 10K run. So many men, and they still have over 9 kilometers to go.
And that's Mark Bates running into our picture now, followed by Wesley Hobson. And there is Simon Lessing of Great Britain, Andrew McMartin of Canada, Rob Burrell of Holland.
And back to the women's race, though, a great battle still going on because Donna Peters is making inroads on the lady we're looking, Mishellie Jones of Australia. So Joanne Ritchie still in second place, but Donna Peters now is really coming through as the ladies head towards the town of Huntsville.
And speaking of Donna Peters, there she is. What a tremendous bike ride Peters is having.
She has almost made up the 3-minute deficit she had on Joanne Ritchie. And there's a great battle going on behind Donna as well. Fiona Cribb, the Canadian, now about to be overtaken by Lone Larsen, who is in fact the Danish 50-kilometre cycling champion. She has some great teammates in Annette Peterson and Suzanne Nielsen. That is Lone Larsen, the Scandinavians, really strong, but only 3 women in their team, so they all have to finish. They come into Huntsville now. Mishellie Jones leading the way, the bronze medalist from last year with the gold medalist just meters behind.
Now remember, in the men's race, this is the spot on the bike course where we had an accident. Both Mishellie Jones and Joanne Ritchie navigating this portion of the course successfully.
And getting lots of encouragement from the great crowd here, as there is a great crowd also in transition as we take a look and see Brad Bevan there. He looks very, very disappointed. I don't know if he's injured, but it looks as though he's not even going to continue. A great disappointment for Brad personally and a great disappointment for the Australian team. There is no way now they can place team-wise. But what an end to your triathlon year, Brad Bevan. Very disappointing as we see lots and lots of people pouring out onto the course. We saw the lead group go through. Garrett McCarthy still the leader. They're getting closer to the 5K mark, but the men behind him are closing in.
And this view from the helicopter will give you an indication of just how close that pack is to Garrett McCarthy. Simon Lessing is in that group. What a tremendous year he has had in triathlon for his country, Great Britain. We had a chance to talk to Simon Lessing about his strategy coming into the World Championships here in Muskoka, Canada.
My race tactics are to come out with the lead bunch in the swim and try and stay in touch with the lead riders, and hopefully I can do what I have to do on the run. I am a runner initially, and we'll see how it goes.
Well, so far it's going exceptionally well for Simon Lessing of Great Britain, who was 12th out of the swim.
And the lady who was 8th out of the swim, Mishellie Jones, is still our leader in the women's race, but it's still not much of a gap there between her and Joanne Ritchie, the Canadian. Donna Peters also still pouring on the pace and getting closer to the top 2. There she is. The lady was known previously as Donna Landreville Peters, a duathlete turned triathlete, and has had some great wins this season.
I can't believe how quickly she has been able to move and make up so much ground on the bike.
Fiona Cribb we're seeing there with Lone Larsen. That's Fiona Cribb, the Canadian. Isabel Mouton in there, and Lone Larsen, the Dane. A tremendous race going on here for top 6 positions. They're overtaking some of the elite men.
And speaking of elite men, this is the leader, Garrett McCarthy of Ireland, who is now being challenged on the run by Simon Lessing.
This 21-year-old, we have to remember, he was a South African senior champion when he was just 17 years of age. So although he's representing Great Britain now, the other South Africans out there will be delighted because their top swimmers have fallen off the pace on the bike. So it's Simon Lessing, the man who was 7th in 1990 in the world, 6th last year, has now moved to the #1 position in the 10K run.
Lessing competing for Great Britain in the World Championships, races professionally for a French team, but lives in Germany, a true European. And speaking of a true European, there's Rob Burrell, who won Nice in 1988.
Indeed, he has been in the sport of triathlon exactly 10 years and 1 week to the day, and he won his very first triathlon in Amsterdam, September 3rd, 1982. He's doing extremely well. Also in there, Mark Bates, top 5, and another man to watch, Rainer Müller, the 25-year-old from Bavaria, the 1987 German German junior champion. He's moving through the field. Look at him go. He had a very good bike split, 58.20. It wasn't the fastest, though. The fastest on the bike, Thomas Hellreichle, 57.55. So making the turn, that is our leader, Simon Lessing from Great Britain. Also making the turn, Garrett McCarthy in second, Rob Burrell in third, Wesley Hobson up there, and Rainer Müller from Germany. So the Germans well placed here overall, and the two Canadians, Andrew McMartin, their senior champion this year, and third placer in their national championships, Mark Bates. Back to the women, Steve.
And this is our leader, Michellie Jones, the 23-year-old, but she is being challenged by a 30-year-old from Seattle, Washington, in the United States. That is Donna Peters.
Look at her go. That is Joanne Ritchie, the world champion. She's overtaking, and Joanne has stunned as the rest of us. She's made up a 3-minute deficit, and she is making ground now on the leader, Michellie Jones. What a phenomenal bike ride for Donna, but she has to be careful because she's using up a lot of energy here on the bike. Can she hold it together for the run? One man who certainly appears to be doing that is Simon Lessing. He is really opening up a gap. Look at the chasing pack there. They are well back now of Lessing.
There is Rob Burrell, Rainer Müller in third position. This should be an interesting run, but I don't know if anybody can catch Simon Lessing. He is a tremendous runner. This is his strength. There's no question about it.
Absolutely. He won the British National Championships on May 31st in Swindon, England, ahead of Spencer Smith, the new world junior champion, and Glenn Cook, who's in the top 20 right now.
There is Michellie Jones, and she is being challenged by Donna Peters of the United States. Peters has overtaken Michellie Jones of Australia.
Now the Americans are really going to be upset here because she's only on their B team. This is amazing ride from this lady. There is no doubt if she can make it to the transition area, she will be the fastest female cyclist in the field today. We're looking at maybe a time around 1:03. Remember, the top men were about 58 minutes on the bike.
And speaking of the top man, this is Simon Lessing of England. He is now the leader in the men's elite division.
We've talked about this course being a tough one as they now run on to a new part of the course. He is the man who won in Embrun, France recently, considered to be one of the toughest courses on the European circuit.
And there's the battle for second and third between Burrell and Rainer Müller as we go back out onto the women's cycle course.
And it's Donna Peters now leading them through. This is an amazing bike ride by her. She is going to be ecstatic. She only placed 14th in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, where the US trials were held. They are now within a mile of that transition area as we look at Joanne Ritchie about to make that turn, still in a medal position.
A very crucial turn as they come off a steep hill.
And we look back at our leader. I can't believe the gap he has opened up already. There are some very fast runners in there, including Rob Burrell, who in fact beat Simon Lessing in Marseille just a while back.
Lessing making his way onto the golf course. 3 golf courses are used: Deerhurst, Highlands, and Grandview. This is Rob Burrell being pursued by Rainer Müller of Germany. Donna Peters now moving into the transition area. She has a few meters to go. She is going to be the first woman off the bike and onto the run, of course, depending on what kind of transition she has.
The 30-year-old Rookie of the Year 2 years ago for the US, and here she is leading the women in the World Championships. A great bike ride. I have it just under an hour and 3 minutes, Steve.
And once again, you must dismount, run or walk your bike into the transition area, get into your running shoes as quickly as possible, and get out onto the run course. There's Joanne Ritchie, the defending world champion. There's Michellie Jones of Australia. She makes her way out, and it looks as if Michellie Jones, the Australian, is going to be first on the run course.
And Joanne Ritchie going to be third. Michellie's bike split a 1:05, Joanne's a 1:06. That shows you just how much Donna opened up. But Michellie, a faster transition, and she's out onto the 10K course ahead. In first place, Michellie Jones of Australia. Second, Donna Peters of the US. Third, Joanne Ritchie of Canada.
You speculated a few moments ago just how much would Donna Peters have left. We're about to find out.
And that's Jenny Rose from New Zealand, who's held it together on the bike course, coming through in 4th place. There we see Joanne Ritchie, the crowd, her family there. I know her husband and children there to welcome her. And Michellie Jones, her running coach, John White, will be happy about what's happening right now.
Michellie Jones followed by Donna Peters. This is a downhill portion coming out of the transition area.
As we look at the rest of the pack coming through, that is Lone Larson, the first of the 3 Danes that are presently in the top 15, and Fiona Cribb of Canada, and Isabelle Mouton of France coming through.
let's check the overall standings going onto the run. Michellie Jones of Australia with a time of 1:25.29, the leader, followed by Donna Peters of the United States and Joanne Ritchie of Canada. Our coverage of the 92 ITU Triathlon World Championships will continue.
Just like the bike course, the run course here at the World Triathlon Championships in Muskoka is extremely demanding. It's just an unrelenting series of hills. And the footing is also variable, changes from gravel to grass to pavement. It's really quite a challenge. And these hills, boy, they really take it out of you towards the end. But hey, if you're having a bad race, you can just enjoy the great scenery.
And one triathlete who is enjoying the great scenery here in Muskoka is Simon Lessing of Great Britain. He is leading the men's elite division right now.
Simon Lessing, the 21-year-old who has moved through from 12th place on the swim into the lead. He is also vying for the money here at the World Championships and a new course record. The course record set last year at the Canadian National Championships, a 1 hour 52-minute clocking by Mark Bates, who's presently in the top 5. But Simon Lessing, what a run he is having. Look at the gap he has opened up on 2nd and 3rd places. Rob Burrell of Holland and Rainer Müller of Germany.
You mentioned total prize money, $50,000 US is what these triathletes are competing for. Michellie Jones is the leader in the women's elite division out on the run.
And the women often don't get the sort of profile they deserve as we look at Donna Peters slamming down the hills there. Her quads and thighs must be hurting after that dynamic bike ride. And Joanne Ritchie a little closer to the ground. Her husband there in the crowd cheering her on, and she knows what's ahead of her. Remember, she won the championships here last year for the Canadians.
Back in the transition area, there is Karen Smyers of the United States, the former women's champion.
Well, we have to remember, Donna Peters is on the USB team, so here we have the A squad, including Melissa Mantak, Joy Hansen and Mary Cook. Joy Hansen, remember, the bronze medalist from 2 years ago in Florida, so they're really well placed in the top 10.
Remember, there is a team title at stake here. And this is Simon Lessing of Great Britain out on the run course, leading the men, followed by Rob Burrell of Holland, and then it's Rainer Müller of Germany. Just how important is it to be first off the bike and out onto the run? We put that question to Michellie Jones of Australia.
I wouldn't say that the first person off the bike would win, but, you know, they've got the best shot as anyone that's coming up through the field, because if they can get off and run, you know, fast, the other girls behind are going to find it a lot tougher.
And that's exactly what the other girls are finding it right now. A lot tougher to catch up to Michellie Jones than many might have thought.
Joanne Ritchie with her head down there, she has to really focus and concentrate. She is capable of sub 38 minutes, but so are some of the ladies behind there. Isabelle Mouton of France moving up. She was 4th last year. Jenny Rose from New Zealand. Fiona Cribb from Canada. But back to the men. Simon Lessing is really opening up ground. He knows he is within 2 kilometers of that finish line.
And we knew that if Lessing had a lead on the run, he'd be tough to catch. Look at that. Rob Burrell has just waved Rainer Müller on.
Almost unbelievable. The 25-year-old medical student from Bavaria, 2 years ago, 35th in Florida at the Worlds, now is in 2nd place. And Rob Burrell, 2 times a 5th place finisher, now in 3rd.
And there's Michellie Jones of Australia leading the women's race. Joanne Ritchie now in 2nd place. She has passed Donna Peters of the United States.
And this is really exciting, Steve. Remember, no one has defended a world championship before. Joanne Ritchie is coming as close to doing that as anyone. I don't think, though, she can catch Michellie Jones.
We're now looking down from the helicopter into this beautiful resort area of Deerhurst, and Simon Lessing of Great Britain knows that he has this world championship wrapped up. He's receiving a tremendous round of applause as he makes the final turn down Victory Lane. He is handed the Union Jack. Only a final few meters now for Simon Lessing of Great Britain, who is going to win the 1992 ITU Triathlon World Championship. Lessing wins it with a time of 1:49.04. That is a new course record here in Muskoka. And Rainer Müller of Germany getting some high fives as he comes down the final stretch, makes the turn into victory lane, smiling from ear to ear. There's Rob Burrell of Holland. He gives it the high five. Mueller comes across the line to finish in second place. His time, 1:49.29, the silver medal in the World Championships to Rainer Mueller of Germany. Look at Rob Burrell asking the crowd to applaud, and then he applauds back. Rob Burrell of Holland, who won Nice in 1988, is third in the 1992 World Championships. A tremendous performance from the veteran Rob Burrell, 34 years of age, goes over to congratulate the 92 champion. Stephen Foster of Australia comes in to take fourth position for the Australians, and he is followed by Brad Kearns from Auburn, California. Meanwhile, back out on the road, and Michellie Jones leading the women's race.
What an exciting finish for the men, Steve. The Aussies out of it there as far as the team concerned, but happy about Stephen Foster, and the Aussie fans are waiting. Michellie Jones at the finish line as we listen to some Canadian fans supporting Joanne Ritchie, who's holding on gamely to that second position.
The chant of Canada, Canada. There's Donna Peters of the United States. Remember the tremendous bike ride she had. She has really tired on the run.
And there's some ladies chasing her. These ladies are losing a bit of ground to the Americans, however. Melissa Mantak now coming into the picture. As we look at more men coming across the finish line. A tremendous job by these athletes. Most of these under the previous record.
There's Rick Wells of New Zealand and Mike Begg of the United States. Remember the dramatic race they had last year at the World Championships in Australia when they battled for second and third. This time, not so fortunate for these two great triathletes. You get the feeling that they will certainly be back in the years to come. The final standings for the men. Simon Lessing of Great Britain takes the gold. Rainer Mueller of Germany, the silver. Rob Burrell of Holland, the bronze.
It definitely came down to the run today. As you saw, the group that came in the transition area together was really big. And without a doubt, the best runners would have won the race today.
The Brits win the junior title and the elite title. A tremendous day for Great Britain.
Yes, it's really great. Spencer, I take my hat off to Spencer. He's a really good athlete, and well, it's first time for Britain for both senior and junior, so it's a great day for all of us.
Congratulations.
Thanks very much.
What a great race from our new world champion Simon Lessing, and the about-to-be crowned women's world champion Michellie Jones getting closer and closer to the finish line, as is Joanne Ritchie, the defending world champion. And in third place it is still Donna Peters of the US, but she is being chased by teammate Melissa Mantak, the lady who is currently leading the World Cup Series with great wins in Sweden and in Ireland.
And 2 hours, 2 minutes, 0.08 seconds. Joanne Ritchie, the defending world champion. She is not going to repeat as women's champion in 1992. The silver medal will go to the mother of two from Kelowna, British Columbia. And listen to the reception that Joanne Ritchie receives as she comes through the throng in victory lane. Joanne Ritchie, the 32-year-old mother of two, about to add a silver medal to her gold medal that she won last year in Australia. Her time, 2:03.22. A hug and a kiss from the new champion, Michellie Jones, to the old champion, Joanne Ritchie. And now, making her way into victory lane is Melissa Mantak of the United States.
The 30-year-old from Denver, Colorado, the lady who beat Joanne Ritchie in the World Cup in Ireland, has moved through into third, so she'll be delighted to get the bronze. She looks around to see Donna Peters, the lady who had a phenomenal bike ride. She should be happy to hold on there for fourth place. What a tremendous race by the Americans. Look at this, third and fourth so far. And we understand behind them also you have Joy Hansen of the US who's going to come through. Great times as well on the clock for these women. Donna Peters hits the line, a past second in the World Duathlon, now fourth. And there's Joy Hansen, the lady who was eighth last year and the bronze medalist in 1990. She comes through in fifth place. And behind her as well, Karen Smyers, 51st out the water, and now sixth overall for the Americans. Four in the top six.
Now let's check the final standings. Melissa Mantak of the U.S. takes bronze, Joanne Ritchie to silver, Michellie Jones of Australia the gold. Must feel good to go from bronze in 91 to gold in 92.
It sure does. You know, I came over to Canada and this is what I wanted to do, and I'm so happy.
What was the difference for you today?
Well, you know, I think having Joanne out in front there with me, that really helped, and I got away from her. And then Donna Peters caught me, and I just thought, I just got to hang on the run, and it's mine.
We saw you go out first on the run.
were there any moments when you thought you may not be able to hang on to that?
Well, you know, it just depended what those other fast girls behind me were running, but, you know, I felt pretty good, and I'm so glad I'm first.
Congratulations, Michaela.
Thank you very much.
The Australians strike gold in the individual competition, but the U.S. take the team title, followed by Canada and Denmark. On the men's side, the Canadians take team gold, the U.S. are second, followed by Great Britain. In the short history of the World Championships, 1992 will go down as the year of the Europeans, at least as far as the men were concerned.
It certainly will. Everyone sort of expected Simon to be right up there, but I don't think anyone expected him to dominate the run in the way he did. And what a surprise in second place. Mueller, the German, a phenomenal performance by him, and Rob Barrell of Holland, the wily veteran, 10 years into the sport, and he cups up with his top placing ever in the World Championships.
Mishelleje Jones was third in Australia last year, her home country. She won the big one in Canada.
Yes, Steve, she was the favoured athlete today, but what a race it turned out to be between her and Joanne Ritchie. I was very delighted to see Joanne do so well on the run, and the Americans, great team performance there, 4 in the top 6, a great battle with the Canadians who got 3 in the top 8.
Steve King, a pleasure working with you once again.
And with you, Steve.
For Steve King and Steve Fleck, I'm Steve Armitage. So long from the 1992 World Triathlon Championships in Muskoka.